Anybody want some joy? Life-infusing joy?
You know all things. You know that I love you. Lord, I wanted this, and you can give me this. And by the way, y'all, I am a Texan.
He set us free. That Jesus Christ set us free. And then it goes on and it says, therefore.
So we're going to stretch our arms and our minds a little bit here.
I am tremendously thankful for the opportunity to get to minister in so many different places.
You know, it's true. Even Mike said that's right. That's right.
Your Royal Rendezvous, it's the list that's at the end of chapter 6. Falling in love. Right. And in him is no darkness at all.
It's really, the book is actually a 5-step process.
But the truth is, I'm not afraid.
Keep standing firm. Hey friends, it's Leah with your Winning Wednesday, WINSDAY word coming to you on a beautiful Wednesday. I hope everyone's having a wonderfully winning day and a fabulously winning week. I'm telling you, God is on the move in Wellington, Texas, and I could not be more happy. It's so exciting to watch all the things that God is doing, and I'm thrilled about it and just excited to see where He's going to take us this year. And as I think about that, I want to share with you a word that I have not yet talked about. And since it is still January, I want to share this with you. And that word is begin. So let's just talk about that for a minute. Being in the first month of the year, we can still talk about beginning. We can still talk about this being the first part of the year because we still have 11 months left. And as a matter of fact, we have an extra day to boot because of it being leap year. So let's talk about this word begin. As we define it, it's, you know, we have an understanding of what it means to begin something, but what is it really? So let's just talk about it. It means to perform the first part of an action. So to start, the orchestra began the night with a rousing rendition of Bach's concerto or something like that. Let me begin this session introducing myself. Let me begin this video by telling you what the word is. To come into existence, to come into being. So like to arise. With this first big sale, the success of his business was just the beginning. You know, when we say something like that, it means to originate or to invent something. Their family tradition of baking holiday cookies began with her great-grandmother in 1910 or something like that. To have a starting point. They began their cross-country trek on their bicycles to Bar Harbor, Maine from Sacramento, California. To do or succeed in the least degree. So I can't begin to tell you how much this award means to me or how much this whatever is. So it takes on a lot of things, but it's all about the starting point, the place where it all starts or where it all begins. And when we think about this word, of course, many of us who have been in the church for very long at all, the first thing we think about is Genesis 1:1 that says, in the beginning, God created. In the beginning was the starting point for this place that we call home, the planet Earth. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So God has always been, He is eternal. He always has been, He is now, and He always will be, which is just way beyond anything that the capacity of our finite minds can comprehend, but we accept it as the truth. We believe it by faith because everything that is around us shows us the truth of that. It shows us that God is, and He is, always has been, and that He created all of these things that we see. So in the beginning, God created. He created all of these things, and then He put all of these things on the earth, the plants and the people and everything else, water and etc. So when we think about the beginning of the year, we think about all of our goals and aspirations. And we've talked a little bit about that. I kind of talked about it at the end of last year. And so when we talk about our goals and aspirations that we have for this year, we do, as I said earlier, have 11 months left in this year. So January is not quite done. So if you haven't really taken off and started those things, begun like you want to, you still have time. So let's get started on it today. What has the Lord placed in your heart to do that you have not yet started to tackle this year? What is He calling you to begin? What are you waiting for? Why are you waiting? Why are you putting it off? What has He called you to do that you know you need to do? Are you waiting for things to be in the right order? Are you waiting for things to be in the right place? Are you waiting for circumstances to change in your favor before you take on this thing or before you tackle whatever it is? These are great questions for us, because if any of those are the reason that you haven't done it, those are not good enough reasons. Let me tell you why. Because if the Lord has called you to do something, whatever it is, you just need to start. You've just got to do it, because He has a reason that He's called you into this place. He has a reason that He's called you to do this thing. Has He called you to start a card writing ministry? Then buy some cards and start writing them and send them out. The Lord will show you who you need to send to, and He will help you with the words you need to write on those cards. Has He called you to start a business? Then you need to get your business plan together and get started on it, whatever that means to you. Has called you to begin volunteering in a ministry in your church, maybe to teach Sunday school or to help with Sunday school, to work in the nursery, to help with the worship music, to do weekly Bible studies, to work in home groups, whatever it is that your church has to offer. And in our case, Wellington Church of the Nazarene, we have plenty of places for people to volunteer. We've got children's ministries and youth ministries and women's ministries and men's ministries and worship music. And we've got all kinds of stuff going on. So there are lots of places for people to serve. So if the Lord is calling you to begin serving in that place, then you just need to start. And so if you're looking around at what other people are doing and you're going, wow, I wish I could do that. Or maybe you're seeing the successes of others and going, man, I wish I was in their shoes. Or maybe you're looking around and you're seeing the successes of others who are not living for the Lord. And you're wondering, how in the world does God allow them to succeed at what they're doing? Because sometimes when we start looking around like that, we go, wow, that doesn't seem very fair. So as I think about these things, and as I put those things in your mind, and you begin to think about why you haven't started this thing or why you haven't even tried to tackle it at all, let's look at a passage of scripture that kind of looks at these things. We're going to look at Psalm chapter 37, and we're going to look at verses 3-8, as well as verse 23. And now there's a lot of other stuff that goes with it, but I don't want to read the entire thing because it's a little bit long. So let's begin with verse 3, Psalm 37, verse 3, and we're going to read through verse 8. It says, trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and feed on His faithfulness. Boy, there's a lesson in all of that right there. But then he goes on, he says, delight yourself also in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, trust also in Him, and He shall bring it to pass. He shall bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Boy, that's a big lesson right there. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the one who brings wicked schemes to pass. So he's saying, don't fret because of the evildoer. And he says in verse 8, cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret, it only causes harm. And then he goes on to talk about the prosperity of the righteous one and the destruction of the wicked. He talks about that a lot throughout this psalm. And then in verse 23, it says, the steps of a good person or a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights, he being God, delights in his ways. There are lots of things packed in those few verses. So let's just look at a couple of them. He says, first of all, trust in the Lord and do good. How are you going to do good? You're going to do what the Lord commands that he is already laid out in his word, but you're also going to follow through with what he has put in your heart to accomplish. Because as we talked about Sunday, every person is developed individually, uniquely by God for a purpose to serve in his kingdom. We are here to fulfill a purpose in God's kingdom. So if we are uniquely designed, as we know we are, because Psalm 30 or 139 tells us that we are knitted together in our mother's womb, that God puts us together and he puts all of the pieces together and then puts gifts of his Holy Spirit in us so that we can carry out that will and purpose in his kingdom here on earth. So if we believe that, which we do, then we know that when we trust in him and we do good, which is to follow his commandments, we're also going to do what he calls us to do or what he has purposed for us to do. Those things that he has predestined, he pre-planned them for us to accomplish. So we're going to dwell in this land and we're going to feed on his faithfulness. So that's, just that one verse is such a big lesson. But he says, delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. So when you delight yourself in him, your desires are going to be to please him and to accomplish his will and purpose. That's what your desire, your deepest desire is going to be. So he's going to give you the ability to do that because he's already placed it within you. So he's called you to do something. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he shall bring it to pass. So you don't have to think about it and you have to worry about it. And it says that he'll make your righteousness shine, and he's going to bring justice and in your life. And he's going to make it all happen as you follow after him. That's what this is all about. And then he says you can rest in him and wait patiently, because when you do that, you don't have to fret about these other things that are going on around you. So you don't have to have these perfect circumstances. You can just start doing. As a matter of fact, he says, rest in the Lord and wait patiently. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way. Don't look around at the things going on around you, because God hasn't called you to those things. He's called you to your thing. He has you doing something that he has called you to do. So don't look at what someone else is doing. Look within and say, God, what is it that you've called me to do? And then ask him to help you do it, because he equips you as you step forth and start doing. So let's read on. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. The steps of a good person, someone who follows after the Lord, are ordered by the Lord. So you don't have to worry about which direction you're going to go, because God is going to lead you where you need to be. We don't have to worry about any of that, because God calls us and he equips us for what he has called us to do. And then he tells us how to get there. It's awesome. He is so good to us. And then it says, and when we do all of these things, he says, and God delights in the way that we take when we follow after him, when we follow his purposes. So don't wait for the perfect conditions before you begin, because perfect conditions don't exist. We can all probably attest to that. When we think, oh man, everything's going to work out, and then it doesn't, those perfect conditions don't exist. When you take the action of beginning what the Lord is leading you into, you'll find that the conditions will also change, because you're not worried about the conditions, because you're just going to do what God calls you to do. And as you begin doing, the conditions will change around you, because you're doing what God has purposed for you to do. He's so good to us. The truth is, we will never go anywhere if we don't start. You can't drive a parked car. If it's sitting there not running, you're not going anywhere. If it's sitting there in park, no matter how hard you push the gas pedal, you're not moving. You got to put it in gear. And we're the same way. We've got to put ourselves in gear and start. We got to push the gas pedal while we're in gear. It's very difficult within our finite human reasoning to find that perfect time to make a change. Making changes It's just hard. The right time is when God calls us to step out. That's when we need to do it. If God's calling us to do something, we need to step out and do it, to move toward that dream and vision and purpose that He has for our lives and has called us to meet the destiny that He has purposed for us. That's what we want to do. So we don't need to wait on conditions. We need to just listen to what His call is and then step forth and do it. Change of any kind is difficult, even when we know it's right. And I've said that many times. When the Lord called me to speak publicly, I was thinking, oh Lord, you don't have the right person, because I was scared of my own shadow. But little did I know what God had planned for me in the future. That was in the early 90s that He really started tugging at my heart about going out and speaking publicly. And I began to do that. And I got asked to share some at one of the women's conferences. And I repeated myself, I felt like incessantly. And I was just so nervous. And thankfully, I didn't bore everybody to death, because they asked me to come back the next year and then in many years subsequently. But it was one of those moments where I thought, boy, I don't know if I'm in the right place. And it kind of makes me, when I think about that, I think about a story that John Maxwell told one time. He said a lady she still had a copy of his very first book. And he said, I was almost embarrassed because I thought my very first book was just terrible. And he said, some of the chapters in there were 1 page long. And he said, you know what? That was 1 page too many, because I just didn't have it in me at that time. And he said, I just needed to work on it and hone that skill. But the same with public speaking. And so I began to do it a lot more often. And so it helped me a lot and helped me not to be so nervous and not to repeat myself so many times. So that said, making changes is very hard, but we have to change. And when the Lord called me to speak publicly, I just thought, Lord, really? You got to be kidding me. But as He worked in me, He began to help me develop that skill and to do it better and better and better. And hopefully I'm still working on that. I still hear myself say a lot and some things like that. But you know what? It's okay, because I'm learning and I'm growing, and I want to continue to learn and grow as I serve Him. And another time, God asked me to change professions. I had been in the corporate world for a long time. I had worked in commercial real estate for a total of 12 years, and the Lord was telling me it's time to move on and go into ministry all the time. And it was a little bit scary, because there was no guaranteed income. There was nothing guaranteed about it, period. And so it was pretty scary to step into that. But the Lord began to reveal what He wanted me to do. So there were no perfect conditions that I could foresee in that. But God continued to lead me and help me and has moved me into different areas of ministry. And I'm so thankful for all the opportunities that He has given to me to do that. I knew God was calling me into something different. And I was a worship pastor for many years, and it seemed like out of nowhere, the Lord began to show me in the Word as I was reading my Bible daily and just praying and talking and communing with Him. I knew that He was telling me it's time to move into something different. And I thought, I don't even know what that means. I don't know what this looks like. And so He began to show me. And sure enough, here I am at Wellington, Texas, at Wellington Church of the Nazarene. And it's just marvelous. I'm telling you, there is nothing better than being in God's will. And you've heard me say many times, I never saw myself doing this in this capacity. I never saw this coming. But God had a plan, and He was grooming me for this plan that He had. And I'm so thankful that He's moved me where I am. We're just so happy being where we are. And I'm very thankful for that. So delaying, when we know that God is calling us into change, delaying doesn't do anything but bring frustration to ourselves as well as to those around us. Because when we are not doing what God is calling us to do, then the people around us are also not being able to do what they need to do, because we're in the way. Because maybe we're not supposed to be there anymore, and they need us to be gone so that they can do what God is leading them to do. And so it helps us and it helps those around us when we follow after what God does and we don't delay. Because remember, delayed obedience is disobedience. Now, sometimes you go, I think this is the Lord calling me into this, but you want some clarity. God's going to give you some clarity. So don't worry about that. And the truth is, if you go, God, what if I miss you? What if I miss you? The Lord knows where you are. And he says, you might miss me, a little bit, and you might walk off in the weeds a little bit, but I know where you are. And when we're trying to do something because we feel like this is what God is calling us to do, he's not going to let us get way out in the weeds. He's going to help us find the path that we're supposed to be on. So we don't have to worry about that either. So delaying brings frustration to us as well as to those around us. The surrounding circumstances are not going to come into perfect sequence in order for us to move. Yet when we do move, when we actually make that move, we cause the circumstances to change and we stoke the fires of the passion that drives us. And that, I can tell you, I can test that right here, right now, today. Because when I stepped out and said, okay, I'm going to do this thing, the Lord just started opening doors and making it happen. And I was going, well, this is awesome, because he needed me to take that first step, even though I didn't know where I was going. Just like when he called Abram, he called Abram out of the land of Ur of the Chaldees. And he said, I'm going to lead you to a place. But he didn't tell him where. He just said, to a place. So I want you to get your stuff and come on. And so he went, okay. And he just did it. And that's kind of what the Lord did to me, a little bit differently, but it's that stepping out and not knowing where you're actually going. But as you take that first step, then he takes you to the next step, and then he takes you to the next step. And that's how God works in our lives. So act on what you know is true. You have to act on what you already know, and just take that step and just say, God, I know you're leading me to do this, and I'm just going to do it. So act on what you know is true. Step out on faith into the darkness. And I like this example because I used to sing on the platform, and many platforms, there are footlights. So they're coming up and they're shining in your face, and you can't see past the footlights because it just looks like darkness out there. So if you take that step past the footlights, even though you can't really see what's past there, if you take that step out there, then God is going to hold you up. He's going to give you that floor to stand on and to do what it is that he has called you to do. And when we take that step through those footlights and we step into that place that looks dark to us, God will put the spotlight on the path that we are to follow. So trust the Lord in all you do. Dwell in his presence. Listen to him and move in the direction of his voice. Don't go anywhere except where he's telling you to go. Walk where he leads and find true success. So I hope this is encouraging to you and inspiring to you to say, you know what? It's still January. I'm going to step out. I'm going to tackle that thing. I'm going to do that thing that God is calling me to do because he is calling me to do it, and he will make the way straight. So don't worry about it. Just step out and do it. Delight yourself in the Lord. He will give you the desires of your heart, and he will put you on the path to fulfill his purposes and plans for your life. I hope this is a great word for you. It's a good one for me. I've just encouraged myself in all that we've talked about today, and I hope it's encouraging to you. Join me next time, and I will see you next Wednesday. Have a